So we've looked at the diagnosis section of the KTS already. Just like any other scan tool, it talks to the vehicle and it gets the information from the vehicle. So to some degree, the availability of information via the diagnosis section is limited by whatever the vehicle can actually give us. In some cases, believe it or not, the KTS will actually give us more than the dealer tool will give us, particularly on some of the Bosch systems, whereby you might have things like quantity comparisons and the dealer tool doesn't allow you to do that. So it just depends on what is available via the software in the ECU. Being honest with you, the diagnostic tool isn't far different from most other diagnostic tools out there on the market. So it's fairly unremarkable really, because it will just do what some other scan tools can do. But the thing that makes Bosch KTS is the troubleshooting system, and this is the bit that a lot of people really like. So we're going to have a quick look at the KTS troubleshooting system now. Now this is a technical information system that is specific to individual models and individual ECUs. And as you can see down the list here, again, I've got my Volvo chosen here, so I've gone for something that's not sort of your run-of-the-mill stuff, not one of your Audis or your Volkswagens or a BMW 1 Series or whatever, where there's millions of them on the road and they're $2 a penny and there's lots of software for them. In here you can see we've got technical information on quite a lot of the systems on the vehicle. And the first thing I'm just going to take a look at here is vehicle overview. Now they deliberately put this at the top of the list like so, and as you can see here, it gives you the option diagnostic connection and fuse boxes. So if I click continue here, it's now got installation positions, removal and installation instructions. So if I choose that and just continue, it will tell us the applicability of the instructions, in other words what vehicles they refer to, how to identify the vehicle, some safety instructions. Now you'll find there's lots of safety instructions in here, because I think Bosch are worried about getting sued for anything, so they make sure there's lots of safety instructions in there, so it's always a good idea to read them. Testers and tools takes you to a list of what Bosch equipment you're going to need to go and do your job. Of course, just Bosch equipment. And then the installation positions and removal instructions are shown here. So if we click down onto continue, earlier on I said if you're struggling to find the diagnosis socket on the vehicle, we could look at the list inside of the diagnosis menu. Well, that was a pretty poor picture, to be honest with you, where you had a picture drawn by a 4-year-old showing a dot where the diagnostic socket might be. This is a little different. If we click on that and click on continue, we now start to get photographs of where the diagnostic socket actually is located. As you can see there, it shows you a nice picture of it. Just remember, of course, this is a German tool. It will tend to be showing you what it is for left-hand drive, and in a lot of cases you just need to transpose that over to being on the other side. I know in some vehicles they still leave the socket over the other side, things like Peugeot 106s and that sort of thing, behind the glove box rather than behind the driver's side, but that's just because they couldn't be bothered to move it across. Let's face it, most vehicles these days, they mirror image the dashboard for the right-hand drive market, and as you can see there, it gives you a nice picture of where the diagnostic socket is, and even a description of where it actually is as well. So hopefully that makes it a lot easier for you to find the diagnostic socket. Whenever you've completed a section, it'll say, has the section been processed? And if you click yes, it then puts a tick in the box of the item that you've looked at. So in other words, just so that if you get called away, as you inevitably do in the workshop, it tells you where you've got to so far, just in case you've forgotten. If you want to find the vehicle identification number, it will show you some information on where the VIN number on the vehicle is shown. So it will show you, like the windscreen positions and that sort of thing. It will show you where it is under the bonnet and anywhere else that it might be listed. So as you can see there, it's showing you where it is in the door jamb as well. So really useful information for finding the VIN numbers on the vehicle, not just if you're using the diagnostics on the machine, but if you just want to order parts, it's handy to be able to find the VIN number nice and easily. And some manufacturers do hide them a little bit, unfortunately. Once again, has the section been processed? Yes, it has. Puts a tick in the box. Where to find the engine code, where the battery is, and all that sort of stuff. Aircon connectors and so on and so forth there. So I'm not going to go into all of those at this stage, but you can see where this information is leading here. So if I click back now, we go back to that list, and if I click back again, we go back to the list of all the ECUs on the vehicle. In this case, I'm going to choose the engine management because it's the most common one that we tend to talk to, let's face it. Now we've got some listings here because we've got intelligent lambda sensors, intelligent air mass meters, that we've got some information about those directly. And here's the engine management system. In this car it's EDC16C31 version 2. So that's obviously a Bosch system, so we can expect there to be lots of information on that really, can't we? So if we click continue, we get some choices now. Some removal and installation instructions, some service instructions. These might be things like service bulletins that have come from the vehicle manufacturer, particularly things like, service and modification to the common rail high pressure pumps, in other words, replacement of a wood rough key. But we're not too worried about that. We're going to look at this bit up the top here, which is the Bosch SIS troubleshooting instructions. SIS just stands for Service Information System, so it's technical information that Bosch provide on this system. If I click continue, we now get a big long list of information available to us, and this is the bit that really sets KTS and SIS ESI apart from other equipment out there, just the level of information that it gives you. So if we look at applicability of instructions, I'm going to double click on that, saves me going down to continue all the time. It tells you what system and what vehicle this covers. If up here in the top right corner it says 1 of 2, that's indicating that's 1 page of 2. So if I click continue, those instructions continue on the next page. If I click continue, it goes back to where I started. System identification allows us to get to a point where we can identify definitely what system is on the vehicle. So now it's giving you some information about the terminals and connections on the ECU, how to identify the ECU, and so on. There we go. So we've got 3 pages of information on that one there. Back to the main menu again. If we click on safety instructions, as I said earlier on, Bosch are really sort of strict on their safety here. They want to make sure that anybody who's working on their systems is kept safe. So you'll find that there's lots of general safety instructions, lots of warnings and that sort of thing. So there's 3 pages of warnings just there. Has the section been processed? Now you're kind of agreeing the section's been processed, and once again it puts a tick in that box. Working on the high pressure fuel system, so we've got 6 pages of safety information just about that one. Have we completed that section? Yes, we have. Puts a tick in the box. And as you can see here, we've got 10 pages of these index pages going to various sections here. So like self-cleaning for exhaust gas filter systems. So here we now talk about DPF systems and so on, and all about them. So as you can imagine here, if I were to go through all of these pages of safety that we've got here within the Bosch system, we'd be here for probably several days, and you'd be quite bored. So I'm not going to click into all of these, but I'm guessing Bosch would be expecting you to have a read of those. At the very least, if you did something wrong and you decided you were going to try and sue Bosch, I think they'd just say, well, we told you not to do that. So, there's your safety instructions. So next we move on to some test prerequisites. Now, I think we all kind of just go diving in sometimes when we're working on vehicles, and we forget about things like cleanliness when handling some of the diesel system parts. We forget about if we've got a problem, is the battery just knackered, is the battery flat? We sometimes miss the obvious. So we've got some test prerequisites here of things to go and check on the vehicle before we start assuming that we've got a major problem on the vehicle. So that's our test prerequisite section. The next section is testers and tools. So it's now taking us to a section where it will show you what tools you're going to actually need to actually go and do this job, in terms of the diagnostic testers, fuel pressure test kits, and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, lots of information about what bits you need to go and buy from Bosch, of course. Then we move on to system description. Now this is really good information, because how often do we end up working on a vehicle and we don't really understand how the particular system on that car works? Whether it's running a digital or an analog air mass meter or whatever it happens to be, we may not really understand the system fully. And what you'll find here is there's a description of how this engine management system works on this particular vehicle. So if I now click up here where it says Common Rail System, I've got another chapter I can open here, that will open 5 pages all about how this engine management system works, giving us some schematics of how our fuel system and leak-off system actually works, along with all the description of all the components here. So each individual number here corresponds to a particular number on the index here. And as I say, we've got 5 pages of this to work through. As you can see, once again, has it been processed, puts a tick in the box. Then it tells us, things like firing order and some other technical information about how this system actually works here. Okay. Then we move on to individual chapters that are available to us about individual sections of the system on this car. So in this case, I'm going to just pick EGR. If I click on that, a couple of pages now explaining how the EGR works. So, have we got high pressure or low pressure? Have we got a mixture of high and low pressure EGR and so on this vehicle? So lots of information about how that EGR system works. Once again, puts a tick in the box when we've selected it. Here we go, lambda sensors. So it takes you through how the lambda sensors work and how they're connected in this particular installation. So really very useful information about how the particular system on this car actually works. So like I say, there's 6 pages of that lot to have a look through as well, if you really want to understand how the engine management system on this particular car works before you actually go and work on it. I often find that if I know I've got a particular vehicle coming in and it's a system I'm not overly familiar with, I'll have a sit down and have a read of this the night before, just to make sure that when I lift that bonnet I haven't got any surprises. So we're back to the main menu again now, and we've got the first of extra folders that we can open. So if I click on that folder, it now opens this little lot here, which is a guided fault finding or guided troubleshooting guide. Now this is the kind of thing that you tend to find only on vehicle manufacturers' technical information systems, whereas Bosch offers it here to the independent market. And so what it's saying here is, okay, if you've got a particular problem with the vehicle, even if there's not a single fault code stored in the car, here's some guided troubleshooting to try and help you find your problem. Now in this case, I'm just going to stick here to idling problems, engine speed and exhaust gas problems. And if I click on continue there, having selected it, it now tells us first thing to do, go and do your self-diagnosis. Plug in, get the fault codes out of it. If there's no fault, if there's no communication, some information on how you might be able to get communication or why there isn't communication with the vehicle. And then after that, it takes us through things to actually physically go and check on the vehicle. Like for instance, in this case, the air intake system. So several chapters of information here now about going and checking, for instance, the throttle valve control unit. So we've got 3 pages of potential fault codes for the throttle control. There we go. Possible actual values that you might get from it, which we can select. And then following on from that, other information to help us go and find the problem on the vehicle. Once we get to the end of any section, has the section been processed? Yes, it has. So as we can see here, as we've worked our way back to the menu again, it's put a tick in the box, ready for us to move on to the next and the next and the next. So this is really useful information and guidance for you to go and actually do guided troubleshooting on the vehicle based on a specific customer complaint. So we've got several pages of tests to go and do there, so I'll kind of leave that there. Other possible faults are shown at the end here, common sense stuff again, but once again, sometimes we're sort of so hell-bent on trying to find the fault, we miss the obvious, Is the fuel level too low? Wrong type of fuel in there? Has somebody incorrectly fueled the car, So just some common sense stuff that could be the problem. If we click continue, we end up back at the main SIS menu, and I'm not going to go into all these different guided troubleshooting sections here, because as you can see, they give you lots and lots of different possible faults there. So just really a guidance to show you what's there. If I click the little folder, it closes that folder again and allows us to move to the next section, which is the self-diagnosis overview. Once again, this is a big folder that we can close and open as we wish. It defaults to open because this is the bit that most people are going to use. If I click on evaluation options, it takes you into a little bit of information about what you can expect to get from the KTS when you plug in. Click continue. Out of that, we're back at the main menu, and now we've got our computer aided service section, CAS, which gives us a bit of information about what CAS actually is. So a couple of pages on what we can expect to do here, and this is where we start to bring together the diagnostic section of the machine and the technical information section of the machine. So if we go to self-diagnosis description, it tells you what can be achieved by diagnosing the computers on this particular car. So as we see here, it gives us a list of all the functions available to us, like so, and a bit of information about the fault codes. Moving on from there, how to connect the diagnostic tester. So it gives us a little bit of information about how the diagnostic plug is constructed, what pins do what, and then it may give us a bit of information about where it is and so on. So if I click up here, once again, that's another way of actually getting to the section about where it's actually fitted. And as you can see here, instead of a photograph, they've given you a line drawing. So, you know, several different ways of getting to similar information. Moving forward from there, we get back to the main menu. And if we click here, we get to the point where we can actually read the fault memory from within the technical information system. So if I now click on read fault memories, it will now fire up the KTS tester again, try and communicate with the KTS, and then once the KTS is up and running, it will retrieve the fault codes for us. I'm not going to do that because we've already had the fault codes out of this car when we were looking at it earlier on in the video. So I'm actually going to come back from there and move on to the next section, which is the fault code table. Now, if we've actually gone ahead and read the fault codes, then when we click on fault code table, all we'll actually see is the fault codes that are currently stored in the ECU. If we haven't done a fault code read, or if there are no fault codes stored, then it will give you a list of every single fault code that this engine management ECU can actually store. And as you can see, there's one or two of them on here. Now, I've not got the KTS connected at the moment, so at this stage it will keep on flashing up to me that the communication module is not available. If I just click OK, then it will just ignore that at the moment. Okay. As you can see there, working our way down the list, there's hundreds and hundreds of fault codes that can be stored here. Now, rather than just saying, okay, well, there you go, there's a fault code, tough luck. If I look at any of these particular fault codes, or if I've, say for instance, even used another diagnostic tool to get the fault code out, I can do a search up the top here for the fault code, and then it will just narrow down whichever fault code it is here. Now, if I click on a particular fault code and then click continue, rather than just leaving me high and dry with that fault code, it will now take me to a diagnostic section that is saying this is what might cause that fault code. And I've got 6 pages of information available to me here. So in this case, telling me the fault codes that could refer to that particular fault, a little bit of information about how to go and test the dosing valve, and here we can actually see, if we click on there, on that connection there, then we could actually get that live data value out of the ECU here and now. So what we'll do is we'll connect up the KTS and we'll get that out of the ECU. So if I click on this button here, it looks like a little connector button. That's obviously indicating that we're going to be connecting to the vehicle. It will now communicate with the vehicle and it will pull that live data value out of the ECU on the vehicle. So as you can see here, it's showing us what percentage it's sitting at the moment. Now this arrow just here allows me to throw that value over to here. So if I click that like that, it now shows me what that value is. If the value is within the parameters that the ECU can work within, then it will show it in green. If it's outside of the parameters that the ECU can work within, then it will show it in red to indicate that it is wrong. The beauty of this is if you now print this page out, you can actually show that to your customer and say, look, this is what was wrong with it. This is what we've had to do to fix it. So it's quite a nice little extra. While I'm over here with this section over here, if I click this down arrow just here, I can actually go and select up to 4 different actual values from the ECU to look at the same time. And if I click OK, oh, I've probably gone one too far because it's already got the other one selected. There we go. If I click OK, it will now pull out those 4 live data values from the ECU and display them on the screen for me just here. So the beauty of this is it's now putting technical information alongside actual information coming from the vehicle. The thing you'll notice here is that anything that can be zipped over to this side of the page to be stored will have a green arrow available to it. Because these can't be placed anywhere, they haven't got the arrow lit up. And also the values are shown in black because it doesn't know whether they're good or bad values at this stage, because they're not shown on this page. Whereas the one that's shown as a good value is shown in green, and as I said already, anything that's shown as a bad value will be shown in red. If you've got more than one of these items can be jumped over to this side of the page, you can click this double arrow here and it will make any of these values jump over to their relative positions over here at the same time. Additionally, if I want to use the multimeter, say for instance I'm looking at the battery supply voltage to the ECU shown here, and then I actually want to go and measure it using the multimeter on the KTS, I can click that button there and it will show me the voltage down here from the multimeter on the KTS module itself. And once again, if I'm in a position where it can be jumped across to here, I can press this button here and it will move it over. If I want to change the scale of the meter, I can actually set the scale, as you see here up on the right top of that section, to whatever I want to set it to, up to 200 volts, and bring that back down again, and I can go back to auto ranging as well, where it will sit there and auto range itself. And if I click this button here, it allows me to switch between voltage, resistance or current, and then here whether I'm going to use DC, AC or RMS AC. Quite useful. So that's quite a nice little extra that you've got there, being able to bring up this information of what's actually going on alongside the technical information for you. If I click continue, I just get a confirmation again that I've read that section and worked through that section. As you see here, bits of this close back down because there's no live data values shown over here, so it shuts them down, but the bit that is left going is the multimeter if I so wish. If I click continue now, we move further on with plug information about how the wiring is connected on this particular fuel metering unit, pin locations, pin numbers, that sort of thing, what values I should expect. And once again, if I choose this button here, it now uses the actual multimeter on the KTS. I need to then connect directly to the component. Obviously it's not coming through the diagnostic socket now, I need to connect directly to the component. And once I click that arrow there, it will throw that value over to there. And because it's not in this section here, obviously because I'm not actually connected to the component, so it's reading 0 volts, it's showing it in red because it's not between the parameters that it's expecting. Again, another useful little feature. So moving further forward, here's my electrical value here, that it should be between 2.6 and 3.4 ohms. Once again, if I click this button, it now changes the voltmeter to being an ohm meter. And as you can see here, it's saying it's open circuit. If I jump that across, it's saying, you know, it's open circuit, it's exponential ohms, and that's obviously not going to be correct. Moving forward with the continue button, it's now showing us what we should see on an oscilloscope. So if we've got our scope operating, we can click this button here to make that diagram bigger, and we can actually see a sample waveform of what we should be seeing on our oscilloscope from this fuel metering unit. If I click the restore button, it just takes it back to there. We can also zoom in on this and zoom out and so on using these buttons up here. So if we wanted to zoom in, we can do. If we make that bigger again, we're able to zoom in and out like so. And if we want to reset it back to the original size, just minus it down like that or reset it. We can also move the whole thing along like so to actually view the whole thing in the corner. Moving forward, just move that back over there so it's out of our way. More information about the fuel metering unit here. And then moving forward, has the system been processed? Yes, it has. So that's lots of information about just one component on the vehicle, just the fuel metering unit. You can only imagine how big this information system is just for this vehicle, let alone all the tens of thousands of vehicles it covers. So I'm not going to, you know, I could spend hours, and I'm just not got the time here to be able to go through all of this stuff. But as you can see from what I've just looked at, for one component causing one fault code, just the level of the technical information that's in here. And I think this is the bit that most people don't realise is to do with the Bosch system. They just don't realise it's got this level of technical information in it, and it's just, you know, it is second to none. There is no aftermarket tool that's got this level of information, and really and truly you'd have to subscribe to pretty well all of the vehicle manufacturers' technical information systems to even get anywhere close. The beauty again of using the Bosch compared to using vehicle manufacturers' information is the fact that it's all of the same layout. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking to an Audi or a Zastava, it's all laid out in the same way, and therefore it becomes very easy to use and understand, because you haven't got to get used to dozens of different vehicle manufacturers' information systems. So that's our fault code table with a load of troubleshooting information behind it. Erasing fault memory allows us to click one button and it will erase the fault memory on the vehicle. If I click back from there, it takes us back to the main menu again. And now we start talking actual values. So bearing in mind, we've only really talked fault code so far in here. If we go to actual value description, it tells you a bit about what live data you can expect to get out of this vehicle and how you achieve it. If we then go to the actual values list, we can actually select a particular item from the list, click continue, and it will tell you what it should be. There we go, with the engine in its working state, that's what it should be. And if we then actually want to go and see what we're seeing from the ECU, we can click actual values again, and it will bring up the actual value we're seeing from the vehicle in the corner here. And if I press the jump across button, it will jump it across to there. So you can see that we can very easily look at actual values on the vehicle, what they actually are coming from the vehicle here, what they should be, and then we can jump across what they actually are. And once again, if we've got a problem, that will be showing in red, and we can show that to the customer, just to, you know, it all just helps prove what we've done on their vehicle for them. Helps justify that bill that you're giving to them. So moving forward again, a little bit more information there under the second page. Press continue again, and it will say, has the section been processed? Yes, and it puts a tick in the box. And as you can see, we've got that information available to us for all the actual values that we can pull out of this particular ECU. So again, really good information. Rather than just acting like most scan tools do, there you go, there's your actual value coming from the vehicle, your live data coming from the vehicle, and you've got no clue whether that's good or bad. The Bosch actually tells you whether it's good or bad. So clicking back takes us back to the main menu again, and now we move to actuator tests. So moving to actuator test description menu item here, this now tells us what we can do with our actuators. Now obviously we're all familiar with actuators, most scan tools. Obviously the actuators available will depend on the system on the vehicle. A little bit of information about actuator tests, do's and don'ts of actuator tests, what you're listening for and so feeling for sometimes. So a little bit of information about that. And we're back to the menu again. And then once again with actuators here, if we click on that, the actuators we click on the vehicle, and just as we did from diagnosis software, we can now select a particular actuator operate, and then click new once we've selected it. So we'll say relay, continue, and then actually listen out for the switching noise, simply audible, it says there. So it's telling you what to look for. It's not telling that it's just going to get and do it, it's telling you what to look for. If we go back from end up back at the main menu, if we now look at functions in the menu, there's specific functions that we can go and do. So things like the fuel quantity, and as we did earlier on, under the dive section, a load of information what these functional tests actually are and what they mean and how they achieve it. The idle speed comparison test here, so it's telling you what it does and why you effectively. So all of read through that, we can continue out of that and we end up main menu. Adjustments and settings. Once again, when we're looking at all this in diagnosis today, it tells us what we're going to be with things like our particular adaptation values, throttle adaptation, and that. So rather than just blindly going in operating these adaptation reset can do within the diagnosis program here, it's telling you what it means, and when you want to have to carry that out, and why you're carrying it out, rather than just be carrying out something knowing what it's really doing. Again, good function rather than just leaving you high and dry with a function. It's telling you function actually. So I'll click back from here, we're in the main menu, and the same with special functions. If you recall, when we looked at special function diagnosis, we had particulate filter regeneration. Here's now some information on what the particulate filter regeneration actually involves, including semantics and technical information about how DPF on this vehicle works and what it does. So once again, lots of good information, just leaving you high and dry. With a function, it's giving information on what that is actually going to. Back here, we end up back in the menu again, and now we're kind of out of the section of the diagnosis overview, so I can close, and we're into the system test section. So if I click on system, we've a list of lots of different sections of the engine management and some of the surrounding systems as well, not just the engine management, but some of the surrounding systems to do with management. And this will now give us information on testing particular components and systems. Let's say, for instance, at the position sensor, if I click here, now open up a section all about camshaft position sensor, the possible faults that could be detected by the sensor. If I click on here, it will show me functional operation, how the camshaft position sensor, crankshaft sensor actually works. So go. Once again, we've got sample waves here. Click on the expand button. I can zoom in and zoom the it won't let me zoom in. Sorry, wrong button. Let me zoom out on the waveforms there, so that I can actually look at the waveforms that we would be getting camshaft sensor and the crankshaft sensor. If I put them back on, we've now got functional descript how crankshaft sensor actually, like so. And there's pages of this technical information just about how that one component actually works. Okay, once we've done all of that, just click back, and it takes us back to that list of all the individual components that we can go and test on this particular system. And it's quite a. I'm not going to go into individual one of these again because we'll be here on end, but it's just the level of information we're getting here. If I click, we end up back at the main menu. So the thing we were going to look at here is the electrical diagram. So this is the diagram for the engine management system. Continue. And warning you here that there's various different versions of this ECU. The wiring may not be exactly right, should be correct. Normally, if there's option connections linked by a dashed line or a solid line down to the ECU component. We have down the left-hand side here our key showing each individual component is, and on the right-hand side we have the actual diagram. With that diagram bigger, we can print out using the print at the top here that we explored earlier on in the video. And without teaching grandmothers too much, here's our standard wiring diagram here. I'm sure you're familiar with this type of wiring diagram and show various components too. To move to the next page, we have to just make smaller again and click Menu. And again, we can look at the key and individual wiring diagram showing us where various components are and how they are wired to the ECU, which is through the middle here. Generally, your positives at the top, your terminal 30, terminal 15 up the top, and your ground on the bottom here, terminal 1. On the bottom here, you've got your key points here, or your reference points. Find that certain of these component box here will refer to that component back at terminal or position 13. So if you look at that, that actually connects back 13, which would be on the previous page here. And if I want to go to the page, just click, and I'm back at the page. And if I go to 13, you can see where that item is connected to here. Like so, we've got 8 pages of engine management diagram here, so it's pretty neat. At the end, to find that it then shows you a pin layout diagram, shows you the pin numbers for the pins on ECU and on the connector plug on the vehicle. Now I'm just going to address one thing that a lot of people to me about on these wiring diagrams. Why the hell do I show the colours of the wires? Okay, wires here, they all look black. Well, obviously they're not all the vehicle. Bosch, their argument on this one is because they don't actually car, don't make the wiring, they can't guarantee that those will be correct. So you should go by terminal number, not by colours. I know some other manufacturers on their wirings do show the colours, but like I say, can't guarantee the colours because they don't make the wiring looms for that being the case. They don't want to put their name to the colours and find that they're wrong. So that just addresses that one. Continue all the way to the end, up back at the main menu. If we want to go directly to look at the unit terminal assignment, select that, continue. Instead of showing the wiring diagram, it shows the pin number in. So that was the same diagram as the end wiring diagram before. Time round, it's telling each individual on this connector actually does. So in case here it's telling us pin 1 connects to the component Y2.1, which is the injector cylinder 1 positive signal for, and A2 being Y24 it's connected to, which is the injector for 4, and again it's the positive connection. So I've got 11 pages show what all the pins coming in at ECU. Really information, I think this is. Really moves your diagnostic capability to a level, because you can quite competently and back probe or pin out an ECU what your signals are all doing. Get to the end of that and we click out of it, we end up main menu once again. And the next item on our is our air pipe diagram. So if we click or continue from that, it now gives us a diagram, all the components, type of connections that we've got for things like our fuel and air pipe hoses on the vehicle, including things like all the control of the DPF and so on and so forth. So once again, really good info, just so as you know where your supply lines are, pressure and your low pressure lines, where your turn lines are, the rest of it. Really good, useful stuff. At the end of that, we click and we come back to the main menu. And then finally, we've got this final section here, which is another fold and open, and when it opens up, more items that we can look here, and these with installation. So the first item is the installation position instructions. Again, this is a bit of info from Bosch saying, okay, what to do with instructions. So this is only one page, just covering a little bit of information. Back menu again, general view of the engine compartment. Now for most vehicles now, this is a photo showing us what individual components are down the left hand here and where they to on the vehicle to the bonnet. So if I just make that here, see here, showing you various components arrowed here. However, we've got a dotted line like this one here, E6.5, compared to a solid here. It is there, but it's hidden out of the way. It's not able to be seen from the top. So you might have to get your hand and get underneath there, or you might have to actually remove it to get at the component. Warning you, it's not immediately visible. Once again, we can zoom in this, and it's a fairly high resolution picture. We can zoom in quite well, zoom back out again, and we can move it all around as we need to. If we restore that back to normal size and click continue, there's a page showing same again, but with different components now shown like so. Click continue and we end up back at the main menu. If we now the installation position of controls, it will now show us where various things are, or it will give us or describe where the engine management is, where the glow plug control is, central links module is, and so a couple of pages of information where various components actually are. Depending on the vehicle, some show pictures as well. Click continue, we end up back at the main menu. Once got another way of the installation position of the connector. So this picture before is just another way of accessing that station. Click continue, we're back at the main menu. And then this item is the installation position of relay fuses. So you get a diagram of the fuse box and information on which these relays do what. I've found that, to be honest with you, the next area we're going to look at is installation position of relays and fuses. Obviously this allows us now to look at schematic and pictures of the fuse box and the relays. To be honest with you, I quite often find that the best way of looking up what fuses do what is to actually look in the owner's manual, because I've regularly found that the information, even from manufacturers, isn't dead accurate on which fuses do what. But what I have found on here is that generally the relay information is very accurate and shows us which relays in the fuse box do what. Once again, we can make that bigger, we can zoom in on it, zoom out on it and so on, and put it back in the corner like so. So that gives us a couple of pages there all about the fuse box and various fuses and relays around the vehicle, particularly to do with the engine management in this case. If we continue through that, we end up back at the main menu. And then underneath that, we've got further detailed installation position instructions. If we click on continue, then we'll get some information about specific information about components such as the swirl flap positions, In this case, we're moving on to things like the temperature sensors and the injectors and that sort of thing in these individual shots like so. So it gives us a far more detailed position and fitment location information for various components. And once again, when we get towards the end of that, we end up back at the main menu.